Colin Hayes. On the Road by Jack Kerouac. On the Road chronicles the adventures of Jack Kerouac and his friends as they travel across the United States multiple times from 1947 to 1950. The destinations include New York, New Orleans, Denver, San Francisco, and Mexico City that include absurd details about hitchhiking and hitchhikers, drug abuse, sex, wild music, and personal drama, all in front of an incredible portrait of the true American landscape. Kerouac's auto-infographic work tells about the time and place of the movement of young people, including himself, as they seek a place in mid-century America. Jack Kerouac feels the need to justify that he feels lousy and sorrowful for hurting, stealing from, and leaving other people. In the book, Kerouac gives an example where he's spending a quiet Christmas in the country at his brother's house when the bug was on me again, and I was off on another spurt on the road, leaving his family arbitrarily over the holidays. Kerouac, page 218. Similar scenarios happen multiple times to his mother as well as Bea, Neil, and his friends. Even after leaving his mother, Jack writes, I sent my mother an airmail letter asking for $50 and said it would be the last money I'd ask. Kerouac, page 158. Kerouac has to resort to begging for money on empty promises to fund his trips. Arguments and rifts are even created because of Kerouac's actions. I said to cap my anger, and I don't want to hear any more of it. And suddenly Neil's eyes grew tearful and he got up and left his food steaming there and walked out of the restaurant. Is one such case where an argument hurts a friend. Kerouac, page 311. While on the road, Kerouac partakes in morally questionable activities that take advantage of others, such as when Hinkle went inside and stole 3 packs of cigarettes without trying. We were fresh out. Kerouac, page 241. Items are even stolen from a family eating supper in the back because Kerouac and his travel mates lack sufficient money to pay. While these actions may give the impression that Kerouac is a self-centered jerk, through his novel we see that he cares and thinks about everyone he exploits. First off, On the Road is dedicated to the memory of Neil Cassidy and Allen Ginsberg. Kerouac also attempts to paint an accurate representation of his feelings by writing out a pure emotion without much revision and prior thought. Passages like the following depict the free-form, emotion-packed, and truthful nature of On the Road. And for just a moment, I had reached the point of ecstasy that I always wanted to reach, which was the complete step across chronological time into timeless shadows, and wonderment in the bleakness of the mortal realm, and the sensation of death kicking me at my heels to move on, with a phantom dogging its own heels, and myself hurrying to a plank where all the angels dove off and flew into infinity. Kerouac, page 274. Verbs are even created to capture Kerouac's writing style, like jungle night and beer drinking. One story claims that On the Road was written in 3 weeks because Kerouac was the spontaneous prose man, and that everything that he had ever put down was never changed. Shea, paragraph 6. Although this myth is false, Kerouac did compose the first draft of On the Road on one continuous 120-foot scroll to allow for undistracted writing. This writing style is his attempt at recording a truthful account of his travels, as untainted by memory as possible. Through continuous and uninterrupted writing, Kerouac builds up his ethos and vindicates that he is not a deadbeat hitchhiker. The intended audience for On the Road is primarily American youth of the time. Published in 1957, On the Road is considered a defining work of the beatnik movement as well as an ignition of the larger countercultural movement of the 1960s because of the ideology it embodies and the language used. Colloquialisms and slang terms are used substantially throughout the novel. Jalopy, Tina, and Bennies are a few of the most common terms Kerouac uses, which, in a sentence, sounds like such. That night, Luann took everything in the books. She took tea, goofballs, Benny, liquor, even asked Bill for a shot at M, which of course he didn't give her. He did give her a martini. Kerouac, page 249. These sentences talk to the young readers of the time, who were hip with the terms and were eager for adventure. These younger readers, children of the baby boomer era, were not static like their veteran parents. Born in a world of materialism and stagnant suburban lifestyles, many of the 1950s youth felt unfulfilled and lost. Answers about life is what the baby boomers were looking for in their formative years. As Kerouac states, boys and girls in America have such a sad time together. Sophistication demands that they submit to sex immediately without proper preliminary talk. Not courting talk, real straight talk about souls. For life is holy and every moment is precious. Kerouac, page 159. The beatniks, like Kerouac and Cassidy, were searching for answers during their own time, which was the primary subject of their writing and poetry. I just won't sleep. There were so many other interesting things to do. Shows the mindset the Beats had on their quest for meaning. Kerouac, page 149. Many of the forlorn youth of the 50s grabbed a hold of the beatniks' ideas and embraced them, leading to the parallels between the beat and counterculture movements. Even though On the Road is a jazz novel, Kerouac recognized that his audience was starving for counterculture material and their own identity. With the advent of rock and roll, an extension of jazz, Kerouac urged his publisher to get On the Road published before the rock and roll fad had passed. Cherry, paragraph 2. The themes of travel, drugs, sex, sorrow, and dynamic and open mindsets found in On the Road were published soon enough to click with the intended audience, the baby boomers. Bob Dylan, representative of social unrest and most recent winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature, says, "I read On the Road in maybe 1959. It changed my life like it changed everyone else's." Dylan. Another band representative of the social upheaval of the 1960s and embracing psychedelia, The Doors, had a member quote, "If he, Jack Kerouac, hadn't written On the Road, The Doors never would have existed." Cherry, paragraph 1. The Beats were searching for it, just like the counterculture movement that followed. Both movements were founded upon being fluid and adaptive, unlike the rest of society, and especially the baby boomers' parents. Jack Kerouac wrote On the Road for the youth coming up underneath him. Little did he know the novel would have such a large impact on American society. On the Road was so successful because many people believed in Kerouac's it that he so accurately described. No one, especially the countercultural movement, would have read Kerouac's novel if they did not believe it a truthful account of his memory. For instance, if On the Road appeared to be another government lie or sensationalized media scam, it would have a lot smaller of a following. Kerouac knew what people wanted to hear, an adventure tale of self-discovery. On the Road is a story of an ordinary individual who has extraordinary and unique experiences. Jack Kerouac as himself offers a new ideological perspective on American society and humanity as a whole. The narrative style of On the Road was a new, unprecedented expression form that embodied jazz and counterculture. Elements of earlier literary trends can be seen in On the Road from the modernist era. A sort of Faulkner feel surrounds the stream of conscious-like narration, and Hemingway's Green Hills of Africa and Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men are mentioned in On the Road, whose stylistic forms Kerouac incorporates into the novel. In the spirit of Faulkner and jazz music, On the Road flows like a jazz concert within Kerouac's head. The lack of section breaks in the story reads as such. In my imagining foresaw, Book 2, It Was a Year, Kerouac, page 212. This is a minor detail, yet a prime example of the continuous free-form thought mentioned in On the Road. If On the Road is a concert in Kerouac's head, then his travels across the country are the background instruments and riffs, and the events of the journey are the solos. Much like Hemingway's and Steinbeck's novels, the barrenness of life and simple wants function as the solos of the novel. Each action has its up and downs and unique arrangements of descriptions, just like a solo. Sex is one of the most simple desires of humanity, and thus is often mentioned. Each scene is poetic and reads like such. She spread her little legs, and I made love to her in the sweetness of the weary morning. Kerouac, page 186. Much how jazz experiments, characters in On the Road also experiment sexually. In the original scroll version, another solo sounds like this. Neil proceeded to handle the fag like a woman, tipping him over, legs in the air and all, and gave him a monstrous, huge banging. Kerouac, page 307. Each scene offers vivid and free descriptions of topics hushed by society. Throughout the novel, the characters actually listen to jazz. These parts of the story warrant the greatest roaring solos of the novel, which showcase Jack Kerouac's unique and creative style. Kerouac's literary jazz sounds like boom, kick. That drummer was kicking his drums down the cellar and rolling the beat upstairs with his murder sticks. Rattly boom. A big, fat man was jumping on the platform, making it sag and creak. Yoo! The pianist was only pounding the keys with the spread-eagled fingers, chords. At intervals, when the great tenorman was drawing breath for another blast, Chinese chords. shuddering the piano and every timbre, chink and wire, boing. Kerouac, page 296. These passages are filled with creative spins on Faulkner-like stream-of-conscious writing. All of the jazz-like writings brings forth truth about basic human desires out of the memory of one individual. The free-form writing is Dionysian, but this keeps the story more truthful and less likely to fall into conflict with itself. Only the extraordinary parts of Kerouac's life are shown, not the average working days in New York or San Francisco. These omissions put gaps in the story, but nothing exciting or noteworthy happened during these times. Although these omissions paint a slightly tainted picture of life, Kerouac was only writing about his memories on the road. As a new narrative form, On the Road warrants publication because of its innovative style that illustrates jazz and human desires. Jack Kerouac's novel, On the Road, is still an important and refreshing addition to anyone's reading list. Because of its unique narrative style based in jazz, but also from a historical position as the start of the countercultural movement, On the Road still warrants reading. This novel shaped the very fabric of American society. The language and colloquialisms are outdated and no longer as shocking as they were in 1957, creating a disconnect between the story and Kerouac's points. However, the ideology, rooted in self-discovery and musical revelation, is still important in today's society. One can still learn much about one's own wants and desires. On the surface, On the Road is still a compelling story about wild travels across the U.S., powerful enough to captivate a reader. I would recommend On the Road to anyone who is interested in an adventure, romantic, historical, or musical novel. Just be careful when reading it, because one gets the bug, too, and wants to join Jack Kerouac and Neil Cassidy on the road.